In this video we're going to combine a couple of the layer options, so it might go a little quick, so feel free to pause and rewind whenever you need to. So I'm just going to open my layers palette here so I can see I have a background. I'm going to double click on that just to release it so I have a free moving layer. I'm going to duplicate it by right clicking on there and duplicating the layer. So now I have two of them. Now one of the things we can look at is these blending modes on the top. So you'll notice I have a whole selection here, and they all work in different ways, and really it comes down to playing a little bit. I know which ones I use a lot. I use lighten, overlay, and multiply most of the time when I do use them. So I'm just going to put a multiply layer on here, and you'll notice the image goes fairly dark. That's okay. I can also use my opacity and just turn it down, maybe to about 50%. So if I want to make the image a little darker, a little richer in color, that's one way of doing it. If I toggle off the layer, I can see the changes I've put on there. So, and the nice part is I can change these at any point in time. Say I don't like multiply, say I want to go to lighten. Doesn't do much for this particular one, so maybe I'll go to overlay. That's a little extreme contrast now, so you'll notice there's quite a difference there. So maybe that's a little too intense, so I'll drop it down to 60%, and now it just has a little more pop. So that's a quick way of using these blending modes up here to work with two layers to give a little more color. I'm also going to add a third layer, and I'm going to drag it down to the bottom, and I am going to bucket fill that with white, and I'm going to use this to make a matte. So you can see the background layer here is white. I'm going to find my canvas size, and I am going to add 3 inches to the width, 2 inches to the height. It's all relative, and you'll notice if I turn off my image layers, there's my canvas, so I'll fill that all with white. And now what I have going here is I have a bit of a border, so I'm going to shrink this a little bit. And it just helps frame the image so it looks a little better. These two images or layers here, I'm actually going to place in a folder called a group, and I'll call this water. And then I can take both of those, drag them into water, and I can close and hide them just for a little bit of neatness. I can turn them both off at the same time, which is nice. And when I right click on here, you'll notice there's some more options for me. I am going to take these two layers, and I'm going to try some blending options on them. Now this is another option for the layers. Mostly it revolves around edges. So if I want to put a stroke, you'll see a small black line went around that. So if I click on that stroke, I can see it's 1 pixel. It's on the outside, so maybe I'll turn that up a bit so you can really see it. I like putting it on the inside personally because it seems to square it off. I'm going to maybe just leave it at about 3. And then the other thing I tend to use a lot on images is a drop shadow. You can play with the angle, you can play with, again, the modes you want to work with. I just leave it the way it is normally. And you'll notice down here there's a bit of a drop shadow forming. I like it to be a little bit softer. So you just play with the size, the spread, and something like that works. Okay, so now I have a couple of blending modes here. I've got, or with an overlay on top of another layer, I've got some blending options. I put a drop shadow and a stroke around the edge of it. Now the nice part is I can always go back in and change those anytime I want. Watch the order. If I drag this layer up to the top though, it goes back to the flat image, so make sure you keep your order proper. And the last thing I think I might do is I might take this whole group, and I'm going to move my move tool here, and I'm just going to use my arrows to shove it up a little bit higher to the top, something like that. And then I might take my text tool, and maybe I'll put my name on there. I don't think I'm going to work in red though. I think I'll work in, let's sample a color from here. Let's go blue, and maybe I'll start with something like that. Jaron Child's photography, if I know how to spell it right. And I'll bring that down. Okay, there it is. And now the nice thing about these blending options is that they also apply to text layers. So if I go to right click on that layer and hit blending options, I get the drop shadow, stroke, and all those things again. And there's inner glow, outer glow. You can try this. You just play with the colors just like your gradients. You can bevel and emboss, which makes them look like they have really cool edges. It's just a bit of playing. So I personally like the drop shadow. It's what I'm hooked on. Uh, and I'm just going to do that just to give it some depth. And I might even just see what a stroke looks like on this as well. That's a little heavy inside. And I don't know if I like that. So I'll probably not use the stroke on that one. And I'll just stick with the drop shadow. And let's see if we can make it look a little more funky here. Maybe something like that. That's probably good enough for now. Bring that back a little bit. There it is. Good enough. And the last thing I'll do is I'll line them all up. So I'll make sure I'm on the move tool. I'm going to grab my layers, all of them, and I will click on the alignment button here and make everything dead center. So there's my final image. I'm going to take a photo. So here's what I started with, and here's what I ended with. So to me it looks a lot better, more presentable, would make a nice print on a wall, and I get a little bit of advertising out of it. Enjoy!